So, I got a question for you. Can you sum up what mastering is in one sentence?
Ooh, one sentence. Making something awesome awesomer.
I love that. That is so good.
I mean, it's more than just a one-sentence explanation. It would be hard for me to squeeze it in, but that's what mastering is.
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hey, I'm Isabelle, and today I'll be talking with mastering engineer Daniel Rowland all about mastering, its evolution over the decades, and the role it plays in modern music. Let's dive into it. Who the heck are you?
My name is Daniel Rowland, and I am a musician, music producer, and mastering engineer. It's an interesting job because, again, you're trying to figure out the best version of something when there's multiple paths to take there, potentially. I've gotten to work on a lot of, awesome big projects, from a lot of big hip-hop stuff to properties that I love, like Marvel and Star Wars, and video game soundtracks and things like that.
From the point that vinyl records were the go-to medium for music distribution, the role of the mastering engineer has changed a lot.
This is the tape that was used to record the original session. Now it is being electronically transcribed to a lacquer record, which we call a lacquer master.
Mastering, as we know it today, really began with the release of the Ampex Model 200 tape recorder. The first mastering engineers, then called transfer engineers, were responsible for transferring recordings from tape to vinyl. Back in the day, performances were recorded straight to vinyl, with no change in medium. This may sound convenient, but the resulting quality left much to be desired. With the widespread adoption of tape, recordings got a boost in quality, albeit with a few extra steps to duplication.
And then at the right moment, the master tape is set in motion by a slider switch. One more check through the microscope as the grooves are being cut, and the transfer goes ahead.
Nowadays, we think of mastering engineers as being crucial to the finished sound of a record, but they only really started making changes to the audio when the Recording Industry Association of America introduced the RIAA equalization curve. This quickly became the de facto global industry standard for vinyl records. By standardizing the frequency response of playback devices, records could be cut with narrower, tighter grooves, allowing for longer playback times. Bass-heavy recordings presented a problem, though, with the stylus often jumping out of the groove and potentially damaging the record. To address this issue, engineers began to apply corrective EQ to help make more playable and better sounding vinyl records. Really, it's this addition of corrective EQ and processing that made mastering such a crucial part of music production. So, someone I know just finished recording and mixing their song. Why should they have it mastered?
First of all, because they've been attached to that song for so long, and especially if they're the person mixing the song, it's hard to have perspective on the nuance that mastering is going to bring to your mix. Otherwise, you would have just mixed it that way, right? So you really do need a separate view on the art that you've made to make sure, that there's not something that you miss. Not everyone is in a situation in their studio where they can even be making the correct judgments, even if they have the knowledge to make those judgments, right? Because if your studio isn't treated properly and your speakers aren't flat and you're not in an acoustically dialed-in environment, you're going to make the wrong decisions. Ultimately, if you care about what you're doing and you want it to be the best you can be, that's probably going to happen in the hands of a trained mastering engineer or technology that is capable of lending a hand there.
Think of mastering as the glue and polish that optimizes playback quality on all devices and mediums. A mastering engineer aims to make a record sound good on everything, from tiny iPhone speakers to a massive sound system. There are different specifications you'll want to hit during mastering, depending on what medium you're releasing on. Vinyl, tape, digital, they each need something a little different. The overall goal of mastering is always to ensure that your audio sounds the best that it possibly can on every sound system. In short, the final quality check of mastering really ensures that your record sounds the way you intended it to.
The engineer, who is called a mixer, can adjust the balance of sound on each instrument in the orchestra.
What's the main difference between mixing and mastering?
Mixing is taking multiple sources, right? So your vocal, your individual drum tracks, your bass, and all of that, right? And you're combining that together into kind of a cohesive picture. You're mixing it, right? And that, of course, includes adding effects and depth and dimension and all of that stuff. But then, you need to take a real holistic view of the entire, typically stereo mix that you've created. And kind of, there's more nuance that can be done there, specifically when it comes to kind of making those tracks glue together and have weight. Obviously loudness is a big part of that. There's so much that goes into mastering that's similar to mixing, to be honest with you, but just more focused. And it takes specific tools, right? Oftentimes we use a little bit different tools in mastering than you use in mixing as well, which takes a different knowledge set. So they're not completely dissimilar, but mastering is definitely more fine-tuning.
Think of recording and mixing like making a cake. You're cracking eggs, adding butter, mixing all the ingredients together. It's the same thing. Mastering is the final touch of icing on the cake, but arguably also the baking process itself. It's ensuring that all the ingredients you've added translate the way you want. Overbake it or underbake it, and that careful mix you crafted might not translate. Mastering is stepping back and looking at the project as a whole. So what kind of decisions are you making when you're mastering a song?
I don't just go immediately to a processor and do something out of habit on a master. I'm listening to the song for what it is, meeting it where it's at. And the first thing that I typically do is look for things that I want to remove from the song, or things that I could correct, basically. And a lot of time that's on the EQ side of things. So whether there's some resonant frequencies that were missed in the mix, or then the next step for that would be things that are maybe too dull, or maybe there's not enough bass, or maybe there is too much bass. That kind of a thing on the frequency side is where I personally start, though everyone is different.
It also involves choosing the track order if it's an album, and making sure each song flows seamlessly into the next. Remember, every song on an album might not be mixed by the same person. The mastering engineer will make sure each mix stands on its own, but also complements the others.
Okay, fellas, that's a good take. We'll use that.
So how does a mastering engineer define how loud a song should be?
Wars are fought over loudness, as I think most people are probably aware of. I mean, the way that a mastering engineer decides how loud something should be is based upon what the client wants. End of discussion, right? So ultimately, they are right. We can try to kind of guide them based upon industry standards and things like that, but ultimately, if it sounds good to their ear, they're the arbiter there. So having said that, it's great to go look at competing songs that you like, or in my case, songs that I think are in a similar genre space that I know you're going to be up against out in the market, and we would kind of use those to get a gauge of loudness.
The mastering tools that came along after the release of the CD changed everything when it came to loudness. You may know this as the Loudness Wars. The Loudness Wars. The compact disc is a digital format, which means it has a clearly defined peak amplitude called digital full scale. Analog never had such a concrete benchmark. Tools like the Waves L1 limiter allowed mastering engineers to push the loudness of the music in order to compete with other releases. The loudness trend has just started to dial back with the introduction of streaming services.
Different streaming services have different loudness normalization standards. So Spotify versus Apple Music versus, et cetera, are going to try to fit your master into a certain range so that everything kind of sits together properly in the streaming service.
This is measured in LUFS, loudness units relative to full scale.
Having said that, people still have their things mastered very loud, even though knowing going to streaming they're going to get turned down. So it's really preference of the client, long story short.
Basically, your mastering engineer will go for a loudness that fits your style of music as well as the medium it's being released on. If someone wants to master their own music, should they?
Not if they can avoid it. Even as a trained master who's mastered thousands of projects, I will still mess my own music up if I master it. You're going to probably second guess the decisions you made in your mix. If I, as a mastering engineer, get an amazing sounding mix, like the perfect mix, guess what I'm doing to it? Nothing. Right? You even need somebody to make that judgment for you, to let you know if what you've done is awesome and is perfect the way that it is, or if it could be enhanced or refined or what have you. So part of it is about the sonic result you're going to get from mastering, and another part is just having something or someone else take a peek at it and maybe take it in a direction that you wouldn't have thought of. That's the whole point. Even if it's just a reference and then you go master it yourself, you still need somebody or something else to give you a perspective.
You can know your room and speakers, but you don't want to be fixing problems that happen specifically because of them. If you end up hiring a mastering engineer, they'll have a great room with an amazing playback system. This allows them to make very focused decisions while also hearing the playback of the source material in a neutral environment. All that being said, it is possible to master your own music, but you may be doing more harm than good, especially if you don't have the experience yet. How does automated mastering fit into the picture?
Automated mastering is trained upon decisions that real mastering engineers make. I mean, LANDR's a great example of it, where there's a whole team of engineers that master literally thousands and thousands of projects, and the LANDR AI is learning from all the knobs that were turned by those engineers and kind of comparing it to what it would have done and growing, right? It's the same way that I've, learned how to master to some degree. It's a really interesting technology. So I take a piece of music in, and I look at it before I make any decisions on what tools to put together or what knobs to turn, and LANDR is very similar to that. I figure the genre out, I think about what are other songs in that genre that it's going to go against. Automated mastering is doing the exact same thing. You really need to put your time and effort in on your mix. You're never going to end up with an awesome product if you're not starting out with awesome ingredients. I hate to say this as a mastering person, but you should spend money on the mix side of things and making sure that that's right, and then your master is going to be awesome. That would be my recommendation, no matter who or what you're using for mastering.
Automated mastering still has room to grow, but it's already a great solution if you're working with a tight turnaround, you want to send a polished demo, or if you just want to use it to double-check your own mastering efforts. As automated mastering becomes smarter and more customizable, artists are going to have more freedom. You'll be able to provide feedback and get revisions that'll help you really refine your sound. From the early days of transfer engineers to the advanced techniques of today, mastering has certainly come a long way. That's awesome. That's all super helpful info. Thank you so much, Dan.
You are so welcome. Dream team, what?
I had such a great time chatting with Daniel today. I really appreciated him sharing all his wisdom, and I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. Thanks, Dan. What other topics would you like to see us cover? Let us know in the comments below. See you next time. That's it. Oh, that was not as bad as I thought. Thank you guys for being so helpful and so patient. I love you. I got it. Huh? Director over here. That was good.